welcome back. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Dambisa Dube for those who are new here, and for the returning subscribers, viewers, thank you so much for being so consistent and encouraging. I see the comments, those that are public and also those that have been sent to me directly. So thank you so much. As you can see from the title, today we're discussing, or rather I'm shedding light on my experience as a mother who's juggling, a career. This is a tricky topic, one that I have often avoided talking on because I don't feel like I have it figured out. And so I just want to put that disclaimer out before I even start talking, that I honestly am not trying to preach to the choir or give pointers on what a person should do, but I just wanted to be very candid about my own personal experience. And to be honest, I don't think I would be motivated to do this or feel confident to do it if I didn't see daily others doing it. So yeah, definitely not the first who has this load, for lack of a better word. But yeah, as this channel is focused on career, I think it makes a lot of sense to also shed light about my own personal journey, all things motherhood. So just to give a bit of context, I became a mother at the age of 23. At the time, I hadn't turned 23 when I found out I was pregnant, and I was in my final year at university, and I was doing fairly well. Very strong academically, very focused person, and I have to give this context because there's something really problematic attached to that. But yeah, I was doing relatively well, focused, and falling pregnant was the last thing on my mind, just because I had taken all the necessary, precautions not to. And when I found out I was pregnant, actually, I was going through an interview process for a scholarship. And I remember the conditions for the scholarship would give the person an opportunity to go do, I think, part of the postgrad, whether that would be master's or honors level or PhD level. Can't remember the details, but the long and short of it was that I had been shortlisted for this opportunity. And if I had been successful, it would mean I would then go to the US and study, I guess, for a portion of the time. And I think this would happen quite regularly, from all the way from my final year till whatever level I'd reach, granted that I would receive a certain average, maintain a certain academic performance. I found out I was pregnant after I had gone for my final interview. I was part of the top 5 that was selected, and I found out the day of or the day after I went for this interview. So I hadn't been feeling well, I was vomiting, and there was a bug in the air, and we thought maybe Dee has a tummy bug. And I just went for a regular checkup at the campus nurse, just to rule it out, not because I really thought that I was pregnant. In essence, I was just going there to go check what's going on with my tummy. Do I have a tummy bug? If so, can I get medication? Long story short, I found out I was pregnant. And the reason why I had to give the backstory of the scholarship process and how far I had made it in is because I found out I was pregnant today, for example, and then the next day, the following day, I got an email from the university congratulating me, telling me that I had been selected from my year. I think at the time in my year, they picked a handful of people from the arts faculty, and I had been selected out of a very, very competitive, very brilliant group. I was one of the, I think, 4 or 5 who were ultimately then selected. And my heart sank because not only had I received the news that I was pregnant that I wasn't expecting based on what I shared earlier, but now I had to, or rather I was confronted with the reality that I might lose in a scholarship opportunity because I was pregnant. Somebody may be watching this in 2023 and thinking, why would you lose an opportunity if you're pregnant? Why is that a factor? At the time, I believe the conditions for the scholarship had stated something along the lines of only, being responsible for you. And I found out I was pregnant when I was selected, which would mean that I'd probably be pregnant, if not having just given birth in America, And that would mean that somebody would need to take on those costs or the responsibility of that. And the university at the time, which I won't mention, if you do a quick Google search, you'll find out where I went and studied. I think I may have mentioned it, but that's not the point. I don't think they wanted to take that responsibility, and we could spend the whole day discussing whether that's problematic or not. It is. But yeah, so I was confronted with that reality, and at the age of 22, as a overachiever at the time, I think you get so used to being expected to do the right thing. And so things like falling pregnant when you're young, there's still a taboo around that, I mean, there was a taboo then, and there still is a taboo. As a lady, there's this perception that it's kind of a full stop situation. You fall pregnant, and then that now means you've ruined your life or your career prospects. And of course that was ringing in the back of my mind, and I had to really deal with that reality, and I had to act really quickly and decide, okay, how do I move forward? Do I keep the baby and disappoint apparently the whole world? Fine, I do that, but then what does that now mean for my career path, for how I integrate motherhood into that? And I have to give this context because I think that was definitely the start of the mentality that I now have in terms of how I approach all things motherhood and career. So that experience there was a gift and a lesson somewhere in the midst of how unfortunate that experience was. So in summary, I declined. I did not accept the scholarship and disclosed that I was expecting a baby. They understood and selected someone else, lovely lady. And I was then confronted with this reality from that day forward, to sit with the disappointment that I would be rejecting an opportunity that everybody wanted at the time. And I was selected, and which meant I was good enough. But I declined on the basis that I was now choosing to have a child. And a big part of me wanted to prove people wrong, because my mentality was, if I had been selected for that opportunity, I'd be selected for many others to come, and that my career was not going to be defined by one opportunity. But it also meant that I needed to sit with the reality of the stakes are just higher now. There's a whole other human being that I need to do this with and for. That was a gift. That was a gift for me. I changed gears really quickly, and I haven't looked back since. That's really the foundation. Comes from I guess the start was a unfortunate situation, but when I say foundation, I mean that was the start of me just going for it. When I say it, I mean career, dreams, in just a different way. I didn't feel that the sky was the limit anymore. I didn't feel that I needed to be packaged in a certain way to succeed. I understood that success may look a certain way, and there is space for all of it, whether it is marriage, whether it is single parenthood in this case, whatever it may be. You just make a commitment to ensuring that fits in. For those who are familiar with me will know that I'm a huge fan of hip hop, but there's a specific rapper. Just stay with me, I'm going somewhere with it. There's a specific rapper that I really am a fan of. His name is Toby, and he's an American rapper. Maybe I should leave a link in the description, to plug those who aren't familiar. I digress. The point that I'm trying to make with bringing up Toby is because he's a rapper, and his entire brand is that he does it as a family man. His wife is always there, even during his performances. His kids are always there, running around during performances. And I don't think people understand how important that representation is, to be able to see a man, a woman, a person pursuing their dreams and have their so-called luggage, not luggage, their so-called baggage or load there present with them. I don't think people understand that representation matters. To be able to see somebody pursue their dreams and make it happen and do it exceptionally so against so-called odds. But for me, it has been particularly impressive to see fellow parents who make it work with their kids, to have the mentality of, if my kids can't be part of this dream, then I unfortunately need to make it work in a different way. Or unfortunately, I cannot take part. I will then pursue it in a different way or do it my own way. And Toby's an independent artist. He's done it his own way. And he has built an incredible brand. I think he's made it cool to be a family man. He's made it cool to bring your kids to work, because there's still taboo around that. All this to say, my mentality when it comes to motherhood is that I need to do it with my children in mind. If I don't do it with my children in mind, it's simply not worth it. So that's the first rule for me. This comes very organically for me. However, that does sometimes mean there's some hard sacrifices that you have to make. There's some trips you might miss out on. There's some opportunities which you might have to park for a bit and do them a year or two later. My children come first. That is a big part of who I am. But in as much as being a parent is a big part of who I am, being a career-driven person is a big part of who I am. My entire career is so intertwined with my personal passions, and that has been the biggest gift because it fulfills me in such an incredible way. And I have to make time and an effort to pour into myself. And part of that is doing my job well. And that is also important for me. So how do these two things coexist? It means that I needed to, at the time, be very intentional about the types of opportunities I was going to apply for, but also to be very forthcoming with my employers, with my team, with whoever I had to work with about my situation, and that needed to fit in. So there has been many instances where my daughter has been in the conference space with me. People who work with me know this. If you're watching and you've worked with me, it would be lovely to hear your insights, as an observer. But I've taken my daughter to the office with me on days where perhaps she was sick and I needed to do some work and I needed to do it from the office. She's come with. I've taken her to conferences. I've been at home during home office, when COVID hit, where my daughter was in her room or she was in the lounge or right next to me, and we needed to make it work. So I think because I've always had that mentality, it has given me a completely different outlook in terms of being flexible and making things work and being able to manage a certain level of stress. I don't want to romanticize this because it's tough, and there are many parts of having this kind of mentality which are completely unfair, and I just again want to put a disclaimer that this is an experience from the perspective of a single parent who is a female in this case. I think if you're a single parent and you're a dad and you happen to be the primary parent, you might have a different balancing act or different story or different perspective. So please take this with a grain of salt. This is purely my story. But yeah, it has meant that I have definitely been a go-getter, but I have required, and I still do require, an incredible support system professionally too. And I think it's been a blessing, but I think a lot of it is owed to the fact that I've been very transparent about that. It's been a blessing that I've really been afforded with opportunities and have worked with some of the best people, some of the most accommodating people, and people who can relate. Some of my favorite bosses and supervisors have been parents, people who understand the sacrifice and the juggling act and the kind of decision making that you need to do when you are a parent. So that has been a blessing. But I think that had I not been present for my own experience, and had I not decided that this is the way that I want to live my life, perhaps I wouldn't have been afforded with the gift of being led and supervised by incredible people, because it meant that I was intentional about the type of jobs I was going to accept. Now, I need to really emphasize that you have to work hard. You have to work hard just like everybody else, and probably even more. So, you don't have the luxury of coming home and doing your work at home. If you do that, it comes at a price of not being present for your children. And sometimes you have to, make that sacrifice every now and again. But because, for example, you are maybe disciplined about saying, from 7 o'clock onwards, or when I'm at home, I dedicate my time to my children and my family, it means that the hours at work matter. So my relationship with time is just very disciplined. I have no other choice. I have absolutely no other choice. I have to be disciplined, because if I'm not, I lose out on productivity. If I'm not, I lose out on time spent with my children because I'm too preoccupied with work. So I have definitely been that type of colleague who arrives early in the office and leaves relatively late, because I understand that that's the only time I have to be productive, and I need to optimize it as much as I can. You just have a very different relationship with discipline. And this is not something that I think is valuable for parents, or at least for me as a mother. I think this skill is important just for me as a human being, to really be accountable, dependable, and disciplined. Those skills have also made me far better at the jobs that I have had and have been fortunate to have in my career. And I really think a big part of that is owed to motherhood. As I mentioned in the beginning, I was very much an academically strong student, but I hadn't refined other skills in terms of just navigating life. So I think the gift of motherhood really strengthened some of that. I mean, I was forced. I was forced because I made a decision that this was going to be part of my life, and I was going to try my best to do it right. But when I say I was forced, I mean there was no other way of doing it, So that's my foundation, that's my starting point, and that's honestly my attitude. Now, what does that actually mean in terms of the development political space? I will definitely take you along with me when I go to duty trips or to conferences or just have engagements. My host at the moment hosts a lot of parliamentary breakfasts and events, discussions, physically at their offices, which obviously require your attendance. My eldest is at school, and my youngest, was recently born, is still at home with me. And the reality is that I have the option of taking the children with me. That is something that is accepted in terms of where I'm currently working and what I'm currently doing. But to be honest, I've never had a problem where that wasn't accepted. Like I mentioned, I've always made it very, very clear to the people that I work with that this is important. But it often means you have to make arrangements. You have to have a support system. And so that is also a very big part of the juggling act of parenting or motherhood in this case, is that honestly, I'm nothing without my village. I'm nothing without being able to pick up my phone and call a family member who can babysit my daughter at a whim. At the time, when I was in South Africa and close to family, I only had my eldest. My son wasn't born yet. I would not be able to remain balanced, a balanced human being who's able to pour into herself in many different ways if I didn't have the support system. So that's a very important part of it. But, if I take my children with, it means that I integrate them I integrate them into whatever I'm doing. I think it has also afforded my eldest an interesting perspective to understand what mommy does at work, to ask interesting questions, to definitely give me a perspective that has been at times frustrating, but also very necessary and has enriched the way that I work. So that is also a very big part of my approach. Flexibility. Just being flexible. This is my situation right now. Do I have a sitter? No. Maybe I do. If I don't, what does my situation look like? Who can I call? What do I do? How do I make it happen? So I think flexibility is a very, very big part of how does D do it all? How does D juggle it all? And of course, intentionality. So in being flexible, it means that perhaps I would have had 6 hours without the children available to be completely present for whatever I need to, do, or whatever I've committed my time to. If I now bring my children, the reality is that I'm not going to be fully present for 6 hours because I have to attend to their needs. That means that I then need to just deal with the fact that perhaps the time that I can be at a said event is reduced, and then I'm going to make sure that it's worthwhile and I'm going to be focused. And based on what I touched on earlier, it speaks to my relationship again with time and discipline. Honestly, I don't think there's more to it. I think those are the fundamentals, at least for me. And the gift, I think, of feeling like I was called to be in this line of work, in development and youth engagement and politics, is that I've seen a lot of families. I've seen a lot of people who have a similar story like mine, who are in this line of work. It from my experience is not that this field is intensely patriarchal, where maybe you only see men. We do see a lot more than we should, I guess. I think we don't see enough female representation, but there's a lot of females doing it, who are in this line of work. It's also not such a conventional corporate setup where you have to look a certain way or have a certain lifestyle to be able to work in the types of jobs I've had. And the reason why I'm saying this is it hasn't been that difficult to be a mother and juggling this line of work. I've also been fortunate to have worked for an incredible employer, the one before this, where they were really a few steps ahead in terms of family policies that are so accommodating to not only mothers but just families. So in terms of home office, that kind of arrangement was possible way before there was a pandemic. And also the flexibility and being able to bring your children to the office. That was something that I'd seen. That was something I was able to discuss very openly with HR. But without being too long-winded, I think with the mentality of just saying my kids, my career or nothing, it wouldn't have worked for me, I guess. Yeah. So I think beyond intentionality, discipline, support system, the other key thing for me has been that I won't lie, I felt at times that there's a pressure, sometimes more than others. There are times where I feel because I chose this path so early on, the ball can't drop, and this is just me being transparent. There have been times where I felt like there's this incredible weight on my shoulders to achieve and never to underachieve. And I think the downside of this mentality that I have is that I don't often give myself grace. I don't often give myself a break. I don't often know how to slow down. I'm still figuring it out. If you're a parent and you can relate, please do share tips, advice, maybe your own story that you feel comfortable sharing in the comments. But I think that has definitely been the downside of this mentality, is that you're on a constant go. And maybe, unfortunately, fortunately, my personality was somewhat prepared for this, because I've always been that type of person even prior to being a mother. But I think in my 30s, now as a mother of two, newly as a mother of two, I think I've been forced and also have made a very intentional decision to say, I can't keep going at this pace. Yes, I can work hard. It mustn't come at the expense. Slowing down or whatever, finding a better balance looks like, mustn't come at the expense of me not achieving or doing well in my career. But I think I am leaving a lot more room, to sometimes just take it a bit slow, to take leave more often, to be very discerning about what needs my energy and not to put my hand up for everything. I did a lot of that in my 20s, and I'm glad I did, because I think had I not, I don't think I would have been in the types of roles that I have been in, and I don't think I would have done as well as I have at the pace that I did. I think that unfortunately came with that season in my life where I was in my 20s, and I needed to make this work, and that required me having to really work hard. But I think now that I'm in my 20s, a little bit more settled in now that I'm in my 30s, and feel a lot more settled in who I am, and comfortable, relatively comfortable in terms of my career and where I'm at in my career. I really want to exhale. I want to be given the room to fall apart sometimes, and to give myself the room to not have it all figured out. So that is also, I guess, the danger of having had this mentality and still having that mentality of working hard at all costs, with my kids included, because it means that you're just constantly on a go, 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 go. Just to paint a picture of a regular day, you would have seen from the clips in the beginning, my morning, that's relatively a normal morning for me, but I realistically only have focused time, maybe 2-3 hours a day. I start work around 9, and I go fetch my daughter around 3. That's a lot of time, but in between there, my son needs something, he's taking a nap, he needs to eat, maybe I'm in a meeting for 2 hours, or whatever I have going on that day. I make my peace with the fact that some days are going to be super productive and some days aren't going to be. I have a work event this coming weekend, and there'll be a vlog on that as well coming up, and I'm taking my kids with me. Will it be easy to be running around with an 8-year-old and a 2-month-old? No, but we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. I'm gonna integrate, especially my eldest, into that. I'm gonna make it interesting for her, but I'm not going to not go for my dreams, just because I'm a mom. Perhaps in closing, I also need to say, because this is my journey, I understand that there are maybe people watching who are thinking they'd never make the kinds of sacrifices that I have made, in terms of never really getting a break or not really knowing how to slow down. There are people who make a conscious decision to say, I'm now a mother, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to work part-time, I'm going to tend to my kids full-time. Everyone's entitled to whatever that looks like. I don't want to romanticize this journey. Mine was simply to shed light in terms of what works for me. And I'm open now more than ever to figuring it out differently. But I do think that for my particular story and my particular journey, I'm meant to juggle these two things. I 110% feel pulled and called to be a mother. This journey has chosen me twice. And I continue to pursue my dreams in terms of my career, and so far the way that I have been doing it has worked. If you have any tips, or if you have any advice for me in terms of this new season where I'm really trying to slow it down in a way, or rather creating more room to not have it all figured out, please do share them. I'm currently on a hobby exploration journey where I really want to be intentional about pouring into myself outside of work and outside of my passion, which is so intertwined with work. I don't even know what it looks like to have a hobby. I was also one of those people who in my childhood, the conventional hobbies like running and sports, I did all of that stuff competitively, that I have a weird relationship with those things. This is starting to feel like therapy. Am I in a therapy session? I hope this has given you some insight into who I am as a mother and the juggling act. Perhaps if people are interested, I could do a very structured video where I take you through my career trajectory, the types of decisions I made, the necessary steps in between that have contributed to my so-called success. My journey. I can gladly do something like that is a little bit more focused on my career per se. But yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to share in terms of motherhood and my career path, and how I juggle it all, and how I'll continue to navigate it. I hope this has been enjoyable. Looking forward to hearing some of your insights and comments if you've made it to the very end. But that's where I'll leave it for today. And please do stick around. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It helps a girl with reach and engagement. And to be honest, it's just a nod that, you know, you're doing well, we like this content, please give us more. So if you don't subscribe, please do at least give some kind of feedback, whether that's a like or just sharing a reflection in the comments. I really do appreciate the feedback that I get. I'm learning so much from this platform already. But yeah, in the name of motherhood, my time is up. I need to wrap this up and start getting ready to fetch my daughter. So have a good one, and till next time.